Have you ever found yourself nodding along to someone's opinion, even when deep down it didn't sit right with you? Maybe it was something small, like a neighbor commenting on your garden, or a family member making a remark about your diet. But still, it stayed with you longer than it should have. As we get older, we like to think we've figured most of life out. And yet, it's often in our later years that we become even more exposed to subtle emotional traps. Things people say or do that chip away at our peace, our confidence, even our freedom to just be who we are. That's what I want to talk to you about today. Not the everyday annoyances or the occasional rude comment, but the deeper things we often accept without realizing the cost. And I'm not talking about gifts wrapped in shiny paper. I'm talking about what people try to hand us emotionally, mentally, sometimes out of love, sometimes out of habit, and sometimes out of their own need for control. The things that slowly plant themselves in our hearts like weeds in a garden, unless we learn how to gently but firmly say no. So today, I invite you to take a moment for yourself. Pour a cup of tea, settle in, and let's talk. Just you and me. I want to share with you the things we should never receive from anyone, not even from those closest to us. Not because we're ungrateful. Quite the opposite. It's because we value our peace, our clarity, and our time too much to let these silent burdens take root. Let's begin with something we've all faced. Unsolicited opinions. You know the ones. They sneak up on you in the grocery store, at family dinners, or even during casual phone calls. Someone decides to tell you what you should eat, how you should dress, what you should believe, or how you should live. And somehow, even when it's said with a smile, it leaves a scratch behind. Not always because the opinion itself is harmful, but because it wasn't invited. It's like someone walking into your house and rearranging the furniture without asking. Sure, they might mean well, but you're the one who has to live there. The problem with constantly receiving unsolicited opinions is that, over time, they create noise in our minds. We begin to doubt the way we've been doing things, question decisions we were once proud of, or second-guess dreams we've quietly nurtured. And here's the truth. Just because someone offers a thought doesn't mean we're obligated to carry it with us. There's great strength in being kind, but discerning. You can listen with a gentle nod, say thank you, and then let the words pass through you like a breeze. Only let the ones stay that feel aligned with your values, your experience, and your truth. Because no one, absolutely no one, knows your life the way you do. And that means you're more than qualified to decide what advice deserves space in your heart. Now let's take a deeper breath and look at something a little heavier. Other people's expectations. This one can sneak in even more quietly because it often comes from those we love the most. A daughter who wants you to downsize. A friend who thinks you should be more social. A partner who wants you to think or act a certain way. And even society, yes, society, has a way of handing us a script about how someone our age should behave. But here's the thing. You are not a supporting character in someone else's movie. You are the star of your own life story. And just because someone thinks they know what's best for you doesn't mean they truly do. Even the most well-intentioned people can project their own fears, their own unfulfilled dreams onto others. And without realizing it, we can start living under those expectations. Smiling when we don't feel like it. Saying yes when we really need to say no. Following paths that were never meant for our feet. What's tricky is that these expectations often come wrapped in love. That's what makes them so hard to reject. But love without respect for your autonomy isn't really love. It's control in disguise. That's why the real work, the brave work, is to pause when those expectations come your way and ask yourself, does this feel true for me? Is this really what I want, or am I trying to avoid disappointing someone else? And if the answer leads you away from their expectations, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It doesn't mean you're being difficult. It means you're honoring your soul's quiet voice, something that becomes more important than ever as we grow older. Because time becomes more precious, and the life we have left is ours to live, not to prove anything, not to meet anyone's standards, but to be at peace with ourselves when the day is done. There's something deeply freeing about letting go of expectations. It's like stepping out of tight shoes and walking barefoot on soft grass. At first it may feel unfamiliar, even a little vulnerable. But soon you remember how natural it is to move in your own rhythm, to paint your life in colors that reflect your own heart. That freedom, once reclaimed, is priceless. Now, as we continue to explore what we must gently decline in order to protect our peace, we come to something that often comes dressed up as kindness, favors with strings attached. Ah, yes. The generous gesture that comes with an invisible price tag. Have you ever had someone offer help only to remind you of it later? Or worse, use it as leverage in a moment of tension? It might have looked like a friend who did you a favor, then expected your loyalty, or a family member who gifted you something and then expected your compliance. These are not acts of love. These are transactions. And when help is offered with an agenda, it doesn't nourish the soul, it drains it. True generosity asks for nothing in return. It's the kind of gift that leaves both the giver and the receiver feeling lighter. But when a favor is used as a hook to reel you into someone's control, it becomes a hidden burden, one that weighs on your conscience and your decisions. If something feels too good to be true, or if your gut tells you there's an agenda hiding behind a smile, trust that. You're not being rude by setting boundaries. You're being wise. You're protecting your inner garden from someone else's creeping vines. And here's a gentle reminder. Saying no to a favor that feels wrong isn't rejection. It's self-respect. This is not about closing ourselves off. It's about surrounding ourselves with the kind of love that doesn't need to manipulate to feel valuable. The kind of connection that says, I give because I care, not because I expect. And as we sit with all of this, unsolicited opinions, others' expectations, favors with strings, we begin to feel something shift. A quiet reclaiming of space. A reconnection with our own voice, our own wisdom, our own calm center. It's not about fighting anyone. It's about remembering that we are not here to be shaped by others. We are here to shape our own lives with the tools we've been given through years of experience. So let's keep going, because there's more we need to gently, lovingly guard ourselves from. We've just begun to tend this beautiful garden that is your inner world. Let's keep walking. Let's keep walking, because not everything that threatens our peace comes wrapped in harsh words or obvious demands. Sometimes it slips in quietly, like a whisper of pessimism, a sigh of complaint, a shadow that follows us after a phone call with someone who just can't see the bright side of life anymore. Constant negativity is one of those things we often tolerate for far too long, thinking we're being kind or patient or understanding. But what if I told you that protecting your mind from this kind of energy isn't selfish, it's necessary? Imagine your mind as a blooming garden. You've spent years tending to it, pulling out weeds of self-doubt, planting seeds of gratitude and experience. Then along comes someone who dumps a bucket of gloom on it day after day. They might be someone close to you, a relative, a friend, someone you've known most of your life. And you want to be there for them? Of course you do. But slowly, if you're not careful, their storms become your storms. Their gray skies cloud your sunshine. What's difficult is that negativity can often masquerade as honesty. Some people wear it like a badge. I'm just being real, they'll say. But reality, my friend, includes hope. It includes solutions. It includes laughter, beauty, and grace. There's nothing more real than someone who sees the challenges of life but still chooses to look up. That kind of realism, that's strength. But constant negativity, The kind that drips and drips until you barely notice it's soaked through your spirit. That's something else. It's not just annoying. It's dangerous. Studies have shown that being around negativity for too long doesn't just affect your mood. It actually changes how your brain works. Your thoughts become more narrow, more fearful. You begin to anticipate problems where there are none. You brace yourself for disappointment even when joy is standing right in front of you. So what can you do? How do you protect your mind without cutting people off or feeling like the bad guy? The answer lies not in shutting people out, but in creating gentle boundaries. You don't have to absorb everything that's said to you. You don't have to carry burdens that aren't yours. You can offer empathy without taking on despair. And if someone insists on bringing a cloud with them every time they show up, you're allowed to step out into the sun for a while. You're allowed to say, "I care about you, but I need to protect my peace." One of the simplest and most powerful tools is this: pause before you respond. When someone complains, or criticizes, or floods you with worst-case scenarios, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this adding value to my life? Or is it taking something away? That single question can become your compass. And when the answer is clear, you can gently shift the conversation, change the subject, or limit how often you engage. Because the truth is, you only get so many days in this life. And every one of them deserves to be lived in clarity, not clouded by someone else's unresolved pain. Let them heal on their own path while you protect your light. Which brings us to something that touches almost all of us in this modern world, even if we don't always admit it: the desire for validation from others. We live in an age where every moment can be posted, liked, commented on. But even before the internet, this need to be seen, to be praised, to be told we're doing it right, has been quietly shaping our choices. And while it's perfectly human to want to feel appreciated, the real danger lies in depending on it. Think about it. Have you ever made a decision not because it felt true for you, but because you hoped someone would approve? Have you ever held back a part of yourself, dimmed your joy, or changed your opinion because you were afraid of what someone else might think? It's easy to fall into that trap. It feels good to be told we're doing a great job. It feels good to be complimented, to be recognized. But if our sense of worth starts to rise and fall with other people's reactions, we lose the anchor that holds us steady. We begin to chase praise the way a child chases a balloon, always reaching, always at risk of it floating away. So what's the antidote? It starts with turning inward, asking yourself, do I like the person I'm becoming? Am I living in a way that makes me feel proud, at peace, and aligned with what matters most to me? That's the kind of validation no one can give you, and no one can take away. It's the kind that lasts. And here's something even more freeing. Not everyone has to understand your choices. Not everyone will. That's okay. Your life is not a performance. It's a personal journey. And while applause can feel nice, it's not necessary for growth. What's necessary is integrity. What's necessary is being able to sit quietly at the end of the day and feel content with how you've shown up for yourself. So the next time you catch yourself waiting for someone's approval or feeling deflated because it didn't come, pause. Ask yourself, would I still be proud of this choice if no one ever saw it? If the answer is yes, then you're exactly where you need to be. And as we sit with that truth, it becomes clearer and clearer. The more we let go of what doesn't serve us, the unsolicited opinions, the expectations, the disguised favors, the negativity, the constant need for validation, the lighter we become. The more space we create for real peace, for quiet joy, for simple, solid happiness. But there are still a few more things we need to gently examine. Because this journey, this choosing of what to allow and what to release, isn't finished yet. Let's keep tending to this garden of the soul together. As we continue tending to this garden of the soul, there's something else we need to talk about. It's not as obvious as a negative comment or a controlling expectation, but it can be just as damaging if left unchecked. I'm talking about comparison. That quiet, creeping feeling that somehow, somewhere, someone else is doing better than you, and that because of it, you're falling behind. You see it in small moments. A friend mentions their children visiting more often, and you feel a sudden twinge. Someone your age talks about a new project they're starting, and you wonder if you've done enough with your time. You flip through photos online or watch someone else's highlight reel, and suddenly your day feels a little less shiny. It's not that you wish them harm. Of course not. But inside, something stirs. A whisper that says, "Why not me?" This trap is so dangerous because it seems harmless at first. We compare to understand, to measure, to learn. But over time, comparison steals our joy. It turns our unique journey into a race we never signed up for. And worst of all, it blinds us to the beauty of our own lives. Let me tell you something simple but powerful. Your life is not late. Your growth is not behind. Your path is not broken. It's just yours. That's it. It doesn't need to look like anyone else's. Because nobody has lived what you've lived. Nobody has carried your exact joys, your losses, your triumphs, your quiet moments of strength. You are not a copy of someone else's story. You are a one-of-a-kind masterpiece, still unfolding. And here's a thought worth sitting with. When we compare ourselves to others, we're often comparing our behind the scenes to their carefully curated front stage. We don't see their doubts, their tears, their moments of loneliness. We only see the surface. But our own lives? We feel every corner of them, every crack, every shadow. It's not a fair comparison, and it's never a helpful one. Instead of comparing yourself to others, try this. Compare yourself to yesterday. Did you show kindness today, even if just to yourself? Did you make one small choice that brought you peace? Did you breathe more deeply, listen more fully, smile more freely? Then you're growing. And that's more than enough. We should only concern ourselves with what is within our control. And the successes of others? That's not in our hands. But how we treat ourselves, how we walk our own path, that is. So let's stop measuring our lives by someone else's ruler. Let's measure by our own quiet progress, our own unfolding wisdom, our own heart. And just as comparison steals from our inner peace, so does another silent thief, unsolicited advice. Oh, how familiar that can feel. Everyone suddenly has a map for your life. They want to rearrange your plans, your habits, your beliefs, often without even being asked. Sometimes it sounds like concern. Sometimes it's disguised as love. But at the end of the day, it can feel like someone walked into your home and started moving the furniture around without permission. It's not that advice is wrong. Sometimes a well-placed word can light a path or ease a burden. But the difference lies in whether it's invited. Advice that's asked for? That's partnership. Advice that's forced on you? That's intrusion. And as we get older, this kind of advice seems to show up more often. People may assume we're fragile, or that we're stuck in our ways and need fixing. But here's the truth they often miss. You've survived more than they know. You've adapted. You've endured. You've learned in the quiet classrooms of hardship and grace. You are not in need of constant correction. You are in need of respect. So how do you handle advice you didn't ask for? With grace? Yes. But also with firmness. You can listen kindly without agreeing. You can thank someone for their opinion and still follow your own. You don't have to explain, justify, or convince. You simply have to trust the wisdom you've built over a lifetime. And if ever you wonder whose advice is worth listening to, here's a guiding thought. Take advice from those who live in a way you admire. Not from those who merely speak well, but from those whose lives radiate the kind of peace, integrity, and purpose you seek. That's the voice to consider. All the rest? Let it pass like leaves in the wind. Now, we've talked about comparison, about advice, about guarding your peace. But there's still something else, something that may not show up as often in conversation, but it lingers quietly, weighing heavy if we're not careful. I'm talking about quick fixes. The tempting shortcuts, the promises of instant change, the allure of avoiding the hard work. Maybe it's a product promising youthful energy overnight, or a trend that says you should do something just because everyone's doing it, or even an internal belief that you should be further along by now and you just need to find the missing trick. But let me tell you something from the heart. There are no shortcuts to lasting peace, growth, or fulfillment. Not at 60. Not at 70. Not ever. Anything that truly matters takes time. It takes patience. And yes, it takes work. And that's not a punishment. It's a gift. Because in the process, we become more of who we're meant to be. We strengthen our resilience. We deepen our wisdom. We discover parts of ourselves we never knew existed. And while that might sound daunting, it's actually incredibly freeing. Because when we stop chasing quick fixes, we start embracing steady, honest progress. No great thing is created suddenly. And you know what? That's true. A meaningful life isn't built on moments of magic. It's built on small, repeated choices. Getting up, showing up, being kind, learning from your mistakes, trying again. So if you're ever tempted by the promise of an easy fix, pause. Ask yourself, am I choosing what's real or what's easy? The answer will guide you. And just like that, we find ourselves stronger, clearer, and more grounded than we were before. Not because we've added more, but because we've learned what to remove. Comparison, external validation, unwanted advice, false promises. Each one gently released, like dead leaves falling to the earth, making room for new growth. But there's still one more thing we must face. One more heavy weight we often carry without even realizing it. And it may be the most subtle, yet most harmful of all. And as we take that breath, as we settle deeper into this space of honesty and reflection, we arrive at something many of us have carried far too long without question. The guilt that isn't ours to carry. You know the kind. The guilt someone hands you when their choices lead to consequences they don't want to own. The kind that settles in silently when someone looks your way with disappointment or says, "If only you had," or "I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't." At first, you may try to explain, to smooth things over, to restore the peace. But over time, this kind of blame, soft, subtle, and unspoken, begins to take root. And suddenly, you're apologizing for things that were never in your control. You're questioning moments from years ago. You're wondering if maybe it really was your fault that someone else is unhappy, that someone else didn't show up, that a relationship changed, that life didn't unfold as they wanted. But here's the truth, spoken plainly and lovingly. You are not responsible for how others choose to feel, respond, or grow. You can love someone deeply and still not be the reason for their struggles. You can be there for people and still have to walk away when the blame becomes too heavy. Carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you is like tending to a garden full of weeds someone else planted. It steals your energy. It clouds your vision. And worst of all, it distracts you from nurturing what truly matters: your own healing, your peace, your joy. Sometimes we carry this guilt because we've been taught to, especially in families where roles are handed out early and rarely questioned. Maybe you were always the peacekeeper, the fixer, the one who held everything together. Or maybe you were the one labeled difficult when all you ever did was speak your truth. And now, even in your later years, that old script plays in your mind. If I had just done more, been quieter, tried harder. But let me say this clearly. You have done your best with the tools, knowledge, and heart you had at the time. That's all any of us can do. And it's more than enough. So how do we release this weight without losing our compassion? The first step is to notice it. The next time someone tries to place blame on you for their emotions or choices, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this mine to carry? If the answer is no, then let it stay with them. You can acknowledge their pain without absorbing it. You can say, I'm sorry you're feeling that way, instead of, I'm sorry for causing it, when you know in your heart you didn't. Setting boundaries with guilt doesn't make you unkind. It makes you wise. It's a gentle declaration that you've learned to separate what belongs to you and what never did. That you've learned the difference between support and sacrifice, between love and self-erasure. And as you begin to let that false guilt fall away, something beautiful happens. You begin to stand taller. You begin to see more clearly. You begin to feel what it's like to live from the inside out, not the outside in. You reclaim your time. You rediscover your voice. You plant new seeds of confidence where guilt once grew like ivy on the walls of your heart. That's the power of rejecting what no longer serves you. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in clarity and compassion. And when you start to live from that space, something else returns. Your peace. Your center. The part of you that always knew the truth, but didn't feel ready to claim it. Because here's what this entire journey has been about. Learning to say no, not just with your lips, but with your life. Not out of defiance, but out of love. Love for the person you've become. Love for the years that brought you here. Love for the quiet courage it takes to say, I will no longer receive what diminishes me. You are not here to be weighed down by the unresolved emotions of others. You are not here to shrink to fit someone else's comfort. You are not here to chase approval, carry invisible debts, or justify your boundaries. You are here to live. Fully. Clearly. Boldly. You are here to plant peace in your garden and protect it, not with walls, but with wisdom. And maybe, just maybe, this is the part of life where you finally get to do that. Where you've earned the right to say, I will not accept what makes me small. I will not absorb what was never mine. I will not trade my joy for someone else's comfort. Instead, I choose serenity. I choose honesty. I choose growth that feels slow, steady, and sacred. And if you've come with me this far, if these words have stirred something in you, then you already know this truth. It's never too late to choose differently, to let go of what doesn't serve you, to live on your terms with kindness and strength. So, take a moment now. Close your eyes if you wish. Think of just one thing you've been accepting that you no longer want to carry. Just one. Picture it gently leaving your hands. Not with guilt, not with shame, but with peace. You are allowed to live unburdened. You are allowed to live true. And if this message spoke to you today, I'd love for you to let me know in the comments by simply writing self-love. That way I'll know you were one of the strong, brave souls who stayed with me to the end. And I want you to know I'm proud of you. If you'd like more content like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so we can keep growing together. And please, share this with someone you love, someone who might need these gentle reminders too. Here's to living your life with intention, with clarity, and with a heart wide open. Because at any age, and especially now, you deserve to live with joy, with freedom, and with the quiet power that comes from truly knowing yourself. Until next time, take care of your heart, your thoughts, and your beautiful inner garden. You've earned it.